Welcome back to the PC Perspective Podcast. It's episode 756. It's January 17, 2024 as we record this. I'm Sebastian Peak.
Coming to you live from Frostpunk, it's Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Brett. The only way to win is not to play. Van Stromberg.
I don't know if that's the saying, but close enough. You can help support PC Perspective, our website, this YouTube channel, our podcast, by going to patreon.com. Yes, this is that Patreon segment. The creator on YouTube telling you to go to Patreon to help supplement our meager ad revenues. That's the reality of being a creator in current year. So
It is.
Unfortunately.
But luckily we have S. Ogden here to help us out. And it's Ogden shall help us out. He'll know what I mean. So really appreciate you throwing a little money in the kitty for us just to keep this thing going, keep this whole thing on the air, and making sure that Josh can buy a burger next week. And whether he needs to walk both ways back and forth to work in negative 37, that burger keeps him going. That's what
Uphill
he needs. That's
too,
fuel.
by the way.
That's fuel for Josh so that he doesn't.
I mean, it's
die.
only 11 blocks, but
appreciate
still,
that.
that's 11
blocks when it's as cold as it is outside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, it is time for Josh's food review of the week.
Burger. It's kind of had a crappy day. No, nothing I need to get into here, but it's crappy. And the one thing that just buoyed me up there was Burger Day. Burger Day, how can it be a bad day? I love burgers. And this is a good one. It's a refresh. I mean, we've seen it before, but it's the Johnny Cash burger. That's covered with flaming hot Cheetos, which is then doused with spicy. I mean, we're talking 4-star, 4 heat thing index spicy buffalo sauce, pepper jack cheese, and fresh cut jalapenos on double burgers with buns. I mean, I persevered. I got through it, and it was fantastic. And I mean, just look at the way that cheese glistens in the fluorescent office light. They improved their boxes a bit, and so the white sides kind of help to illuminate the burger a little bit better. The fries were perfectly done, nicely seasoned. I have no complaints. I'm still not hungry, and I won't be until sometime tomorrow. It's a lot of burger. And yeah, Johnny Cash and the Ring of Fire says hello.
Moving on to news, and the top story this week has to be the GeForce RTX 4070 Super launching, I think, today for general availability at e-tail and retail near you. And this, of course, was previously announced at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, but it's here. The NDA has been lifted. We had one of these on hand in advance to do a little review here for you guys. Not the most comprehensive review, but a review nonetheless. And we can at least talk about the specs, the pricing, before we move on to a better review to look at performance. But we talked about this slide before, the RTX 40 series Get Super slide from NVIDIA, where they've adjusted pricing, they've replaced models in the lineup, and certain models in the lineup are mysteriously absent, conspicuous by their absence, because between $399 and $549, there's nothing. There's no RTX 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte listed at all anymore. The old 4070 drops $50 to $549, and this RTX 4070 Super replaces it, or it doesn't replace it because it's staying in the lineup, but it replaces the $599 slot. Does that make any sense? And then at $799, the upcoming RTX 4070 Ti Super just straight up replaces the 4070 Ti, which I agree with Josh. He was on Twitter, I think earlier today, talking about how the 40 Ti Super might be the sweet spot. It's the one.
I mean, 16 gigs of memory, and yeah,
Significantly cheaper than the card it replaced.
Yeah. $200.
Right, because the
$100, I guess.
the top of the stack is still 4090 at $1599, but the 4080 Super comes in at $999, which is $200 less than the original 4080 that it replaces. Now there's
it's faster.
Yes, it's faster because it says super, which means
Exactly.
above, I guess. Like if we were talking like superscript, it's higher on the line.
Superior.
Yes. The refresh known as Super is back. And it's been 4.5 years, guys. Can you believe? July 23, 2019 was the last time a Super card launched. That was the 2080 Super, which had followed the July 2, 2019 launch of the 2060 Super and 2070 Super. And they didn't need to do Super cards with the 30 series because they were just selling everything they made for a while there. So the specs. We have the 4070 staying in the lineup, and you can see it has 46. I mean, you can see if you're watching the video. It has 46 SMs, which translates to 5,888 CUDA cores. The new 4070 Super, it's still the same GPU. It's 8104, but more enabled because it has 56 SMs, 7,168 CUDA cores, which is roughly 20% more. So, of course, you also get more tensor cores, more RT cores. Clocks are very close. So the boost clock is the same, 2475, although the base clock has been bumped up by 60 megahertz to 1980. And also the L2 cache is up from 36 megabytes to 48, which could help because otherwise the memory system is unchanged. It's still 12 gigabytes of GDDR6, 21 gigabit per second memory on a 192-bit bus. So you get 504 gigabytes per second. Power went up 20 watts from 200 to 220 watts. It's going to be faster. There's no way it can't be. But how much faster? I don't know if it really matters because it's the same price.
How long has been the 4000 series been out now? 2 years?
Approximately.
Yeah.
So we finally get some price performance changes after a pretty static and monolithic setup from NVIDIA from that time. And so this is a great move by them to maybe try to reconnect with their customers. I don't know, truly how interested they are just because the margins in their data center stuff is just so insane. Maybe, if they're looking more than 5 years down the road, they probably could think that, we may need to rely on these consumers again to reach the margins, because what if everybody has a big machine learning GPU that they're selling and there's so much competition and so much, stock in there that they're finally selling them for far less, and data centers are cranky because they eat so much power. And yeah, I mean, if you're looking past 2 years, maybe it is past time to make some inroads with, your base customers, the people who, kind of brought you up from the 90s through the double aughts to the 10s, and now we're well into the 21st century. So this isn't as nice as, perhaps as we wanted, but it's certainly a far larger improvement, and maybe what we should have expected back 2 years ago in the original launch, with the products that they were providing, that something like this would be a lot more popular than their 4000 series was. Now, I'm not saying their 4000 series have not sold, because, I mean, they've been going through the 3000 series like nobody's business. They're still up there in price. I mean, though, a 3060 12 gig is now sitting around $270, which I think that's a reasonable deal. I mean, we'll find out soon enough how well that compares to other products in the mix. But yeah, they needed to do something to kind of reconnect with, the people who are willing to buy a GPU once every 2 years if it is in the price. And then there's people like me who have not bought one in 4 years almost, because it just didn't make sense. And now it's finally starting to.
If you're upgrading, who's this targeted at? What do you have that you're upgrading to this right now? What do you think?
1080.
A 4070?
No.
You had like a 2070 or a 2080 in that generation. Or if you had a 3060 Ti, then the DLSS 3 stuff, and extra memory, it might be.
And lots of ray tracing comparatively.
Yeah.
This is a significant upgrade over a 2080 Ti, even without frame generation.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they can position this against like a 3090, maybe even a 3090 Ti once you factor in frame generation. But just raster performance, it's significant. What you can do with this, or even AMD's Radeon cards of this generation at this price level, very impressive. The 7800 XT, if you can find it around $500, typically sells for a little bit more, but it does very well, as you will see if you look at reviews with recent benchmarks. Now this card, which by the way, it's all black now. I think all the super cards, they don't have that sort of gunmetal gray with the black accents. It's just all black. I don't know how you feel about that. Is very
like it.
stealthy.
I like it a lot.
Stealth, very stealthy.
What AMD did with the 7000 series reference cards. Actually.
There's no green touch on that at all.
No, it's just all black. So here is a peek at theoretical performance. I ran 3D Mark tests as usual. Here's 3D Mark Speedway. That's the DX12 Ultimate test that has ray tracing. And the 4070 Super is only a couple hundred points behind the 4070 Ti in this test. So right up there in second place. And of course, in this test, the NVIDIA cards tend to be a little bit faster because of all that dedicated ray tracing hardware. But the story changes a little bit when you look at a raster-based test. This is Time Spy Extreme, and here the 4070 Super is right around 10,000 points. It's about 850 points behind a 4070 Ti in this particular test.
Interestingly enough, very close to a PCPer favorite, the 6950 XT.
Yes, that one does very well. Actually edges out the 4070 Super slightly in this test. You just can't go wrong with the 6950 XT. If you have one of those, you don't need to upgrade this generation. Unless you want
mid-500s,
NVIDIA.
if you can find one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, unless you want NVIDIA features, they are...
Oh, yeah.
That's the
if you're
AMD card
raster
to get.
playing, 6950 XT at mid-500s is still going to be an excellent deal.
Now, here's an example of why maybe we need to kind of look around at different reviews, because the results that I got with this card, a little questionable. Although I did verify everything, it's correct. It's just you're looking at just ultra-wide at ultra preset settings. So kind of an odd use case because I wanted it to be absolutely PC specific. So what's more PC specific than 144 hertz, 3440 by 1440 ultra-wide monitor? Crank up those detail settings. And the 4070 Super in Cyberpunk at these settings without any kind of image scaling or ray tracing or anything, it's only 3 frames per second-ish faster than a 4070. And then, of course, I realized after I did all the testing that the 4070 that I tested was very overclocked. It's like 130 megahertz overclock, MSI Gaming X Trio. So like, okay, I needed to do founders versus founders, and I failed. So take these results for what they are. Bridging the gap is this overclocked 4070. Anyway, if I just look at 4070 Super versus 4070 Ti, anytime there's a game that makes use of ray tracing, any kind of DX12 Ultimate title, like Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, they're much closer than they are in the raster-based games. Here they are less than about 4.5 frames per second difference between this and the 4070 Ti. So, and here's a AMD friendly title, Far Cry 6, where the 4070 Super can't beat a 7800 XT. So it all depends on the situation, how these cards are going to perform. But at least looking at synthetics, looking at other people's results out there, like TechSpot, which I will go to here, the 4070 Super is pretty close to a 4070 Ti, depending on the game. So let's see. Here's a Plague's Tale Requiem 1440 Ultra, and the 4070 Super is at 94 frames per second. The 4070 Ti is at 99. And at 4K, it moves from 4070 Super at 53 to just 56 for the 4070 Ti. I could scroll endlessly through these benchmarks. Here's the 4070 Super in Phantom Liberty 1440 High, 97 with the 4070 Super to 104 with the 4070 Ti. So it's not big. So they're not going to be big gaps. So I don't know if they're exactly at 20% faster than the original.
Interesting. No 7900 XTX. Just the 7900 XT, which received somewhat of an unofficial price drop, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, it's a good point. I didn't go higher than the $800 mark in my review, so I end with a 7900 XT and a 4070 Ti. TechSpot adds a 4080, but no 7900 XTX, which is actually cheaper than a 4080. Until the recent, discounts and the upcoming 4080 Super launch that'll take it down to $999. But that's been a $1,200 card. So I appreciate the fact that TechSpot has updated their test bench this year with a 7800X 3D and DDR5 6000 memory. So that's good. But I don't know why you'd put a 4080 and not an XTX.
But when you factor in price, this just seems like a very, very good deal.
What, this card?
Yeah.
Yeah, $599. It's a little bit slower than a 4070 Ti, which was $799.
But it's faster than a 3080 10 gig, which was $649 at launch.
Yeah.
Official.
And very close to a
$699
3090 in many ways. Very close to a 3090. Think of the price on one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I don't want to, it hurts.
Exactly.
Now, are these cards actually available today? Josh, you were looking.
The answer is
available-ish.
yes.
Let me go to Newegg
in the US,
and search
they're
up.
highly available.
Okay. Let's see.
I mean,
right
you can-
now, live,
$599.
Newegg.com, you can get the Asus Dual at the list
It
price,
is a pretty
$599.
card.
Add it to the cart.
Yeah. Not a particularly flashy card, but very serviceable.
But you can get an overclocked
And
one for
in the
$10
log reviews
more.
I saw, the third-party ones were actually outperforming the Founders Edition.
Well, yeah. You would expect that.
That's not unusual.
No,
It's like Tom Joad
definitely
says.
worth mentioning.
When you pump up that, power limit and give it a little bit of
Slap
an
a
OC.
Better
nasty
cooling.
cooler on it. Yep.
Little bit more airflow, a little bit more voltage, a little bit more tweaky 20 megahertz here and
Normally, I would say no, not necessarily with these cards, because some of the Founders cards are, huge triple slot. But
Yes.
I'm with Brett here because I can grab it. This is just a dual slot card. So
there.
even with the
a
20 watt,
series.
even with a 20 watt higher TDP, it's
It
exactly the
looks so
same
wee
size.
compared to some of the cards nowadays.
Do you have a later model one to compare physically to right there?
I don't know what you mean by later
what's that
model.
one?
This is the latest. This is the latest graphics card that's been released in the world, Brett. This is as late as it gets.
Yeah, Brett.
That's
This
not
is a-
exactly what I meant.
This is a 4070 Super right here. Here's the 4070,
so you-
the original, and I actually have the Founders, so I'm
Okay.
annoyed that I didn't test it. But it's the same size. They're the same, except one is black and one is like gunmetal gray and black.
So this is when you go totally the lawyer from my cousin Vinny. Identical.
I was thinking of Better Call Saul, actually. I felt pretty stung.
So yeah, put a beefier cooler on it. Throw a little extra juice at it, and away you go.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't somebody Gigabyte I think had one with a 350 watt power limit?
Ooh,
That's going to be
I
crazy.
see that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Videocards.com was reporting on that earlier today.
Super Aorus.
Master with massively increased TDP, 350 watts.
Whoa.
Craziness.
Look at how tall that card is.
That is big. That looks like a 4090.
3.5 maybe? Hard to tell from the side.
Oh, jeez.
Oh God.
almost
Look at how big that
Almost
is.
double the size of the PCB,
Wow.
basically.
That's almost 4 slots. That's obscene.
That's crazy.
There it is.
All right.
We got one thing.
Final
Good timing.
thoughts on the
Final
4070
thing.
Super.
The regular RTX 4070 is still officially $549.
Why?
No.
What?
Not
Why
worth it.
is that? Why?
In our next news post, see-through displays, accordion TVs, and other CES 2024 oddities. No, CES isn't really over. if we keep it alive by continuing to talk about it. And
Hopefully, I'm
what's a
already getting emails
CES?
for CES 2025.
So what's a CES without weird stuff? Now, we didn't talk about the LG transparent, ridiculous TV on a clear glass backing of some kind. But then there was a black film shade that could roll up and down behind it to give you effectively the same experience as a regular OLED TV, roughly, depending on reflections and stuff. But then it was just weird because you lowered it, and they had, of course, these special videos playing where without the black backing behind the OLED panel, they're just transparent.
Have a window in the middle of your wall.
Right, so you could see a fish
at the back
tank,
of the wall.
But because they rendered it with a black background, it appeared to be fish just suspended in air, and then you could have a blue background behind it. It looks like it's going to be $10,000 and just something that you put in a luxury apartment to show off. But
yes,
they showed it. It's like a big box too. It's a huge glass box. You see the black film that's only partly rolled up here, and so you can see behind it the wall behind the glass box. So if you want a mid-grade OLED experience, for some reason, I don't know. I don't get it, but it's something that's in digital signage already. So they're just like, hey, we could bring this to the home for outrageous amounts of money. And dumb.
And then C-Seed, which I never heard of before. Oh.
There are people with more dollars than cents.
That absolutely true. Because pennies, I mean, they don't keep them because they don't care about them. So they just have dollars.
No sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got rid of the pennies, but that's a different thing.
And there's just weird stuff. What can't you do once you have OLED that's transparent? Well, you could put valves behind it or, tubes.
That's a speaker.
Yeah. Oh, is it? Because I thought it was a...
Yes.
Why, though?
Because it's got to be a tube amp speaker. And the idea is that you can look at your Spotify playlist displayed on top of... I don't think it's touchscreen. I didn't actually look into it that far apart from just mentioning because it's ridiculous. But yeah, so it's literally so you've got your music player's interface showing on top of the tube amp, which if you can look at the top, the two little weird dishes are 360 degree speakers, and then the bottom has a big one. I would hope it's a sound bar. God only knows.
And LG is calling this the Duke box.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so you're saying it's got a fat bottom, and they call it the Duke box.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there's the CC.
It's the rocket. It makes your rockin' world go round. So
it's like they can't hear themselves.
Okay, and then finally, in weird stuff from CES, the C-Seed N1, the unfolding TV. I think Linus did a video on this. It's 137 inches. And
well over six figures, or well into the six figures.
Here we see it slowly standing up, and then it's starting to unfold. Like,
do they play also Sprach Zarathustra when this comes up and unfolds?
Are the seams going to disappear? Let's see. It's still unfolding.
But you can get it.
And
still
now
unfolding
it's
almost.
done. Oh, the seams disappeared. So now it just appears to be one panel. And look at that performance. It looks like it's going about 5 frames per second here. Maybe 8. Majestic. Who wouldn't want...
Artistic
the best part about it is...
Artistic.
What's the best part?
They're going to sell an outdoor model.
Okay. It's 200,000 United States dollars for that 137
it is.
I thought it was
version.
Oh, that's the 137. What about the 165? Because I think that's
$100,000.
300,000 for the 165. If you only want 103, it's half price. I would go 103 because it's only $100,000.
I mean, honestly,
Finally, I can get rid of my projection screen, which cost me $100 on Amazon, because for just $100,000, I can get a 103-inch micro LED TV instead.
Not everything that's introduced at CES is a home run. Let's just face it.
In our next news story, dump your thermal paste. Forget about proper application. Just put a thermal grizzly cryo sheet on there, right? Even on your GPU, apparently, according to this picture here.
Yeah, that's what they did.
So this is a story at Tech Power Up where they're obviously doing some temperature testing. Now we know that a lot of these GPUs from the factory are somewhat questionably assembled these days. So maybe just taking it apart and putting fresh paste or this pad is going to give you better results anyway.
So that's what they did with an RX 7900 XT, or an XTX, rather.
Oh, it's an XTX. There you go.
Yeah.
Is it...
so you know there's a good thermal load on that thing. And one of the nice things was apparently it's, unlike some of the others, it's thick enough that when they pulled it off again, you could actually see the indents from some of the unevenness of the chip. Because some of them, like, well, especially the factory ones, like they leave air gaps, right? It's not perfectly flat. And so you've got one component that's actually cooled really well and another that isn't. But yeah, they're looking at it and it is bang on, if not slightly better than redoing it with paste or especially with the what came from the factory.
Well, the first chart here is showing GPU temperature. So that's the self-reported temperature of the GPU, and there's virtually no difference between any of these. If you look at hotspot, you're going to see a difference. And the cryo sheet does very well. It seems to be towards the better, if not the best result once you get up to higher wattage. Because, of course, the XTX pulls as much power as a 4090. So when you're at 450 plus watts, cryo sheet was right there with some of the best results. So, yeah.
I mean, the price is relatively decent compared to thermal paste, and we all know how much we love applying thermal paste.
My only concern about this
just the right amount,
would be you have that extra room for error with paste, where you can put it on a little thick, and you can fill some of those gaps. You need absolutely perfect and perfectly even mounting pressure if you're going to be cooling an XTX with a pad. Because these pads, it sounds like it would give you margin of error, but they're super thin. They're like onion skin thin. Are they? The last pad I used was on the very thin side. I don't know how the thermal grizzly was.
Like I said, they're thick enough that they could actually see some of the difference between some of the SMDs that were mounted slightly higher or lower, and they were all hitting it. But there's one other... And it's a bit of a caveat here. They tested it, and it is electrically conductive.
Oh, okay.
Not a lot, and only on one plane. Not on the vertical plane, but on the sideways plane, they were seeing a little bit of electrical conductivity. So, in the most part, that's not going to be a worry because nothing is close enough to what you're cooling that you're actually going to touch it unless you go crazy.
You ever heard of something called semiconductors? I've heard of those.
Yeah, right?
So you got to put
but they had no issues
capped on tape around it to keep it, in case it slides. Because then you got to be so perfect when you set it. When you set the cooler back down, you cannot even breathe, or you might move that sheet a little bit.
No, I would suggest you don't.
I just suggest you don't do it at all. Just use thermal paste. And this is an interesting experiment. It's a lot easier to do this with CPUs than with GPUs.
Yes.
Next news story, Windows Copilot autostart tests limited to 27-inch displays or larger. Why?
That's crazy.
Because it takes up too much space?
Probably. I have no idea, Jeremy. I thought you might have a...
Let's see. Microsoft says that tests of a controversial new Windows 11 feature that automatically opens the AI-powered Copilot assistant after Windows starts are limited to systems with 27-inch displays. For now.
Yeah.
And also it involves enrolling in the company's Windows Insider program. So it's an insider preview build. It's 23.615, released last Thursday in the dev channel. So they just want a minimum of 27 inches and full HD. So at least 1920 pixels wide.
Because it takes up a whole bunch of real estate.
Yeah, and
don't worry, it's hooked up to your AI chat powered Bing, so you'll get the exact same results as you expect.
Beautiful. It's nice to know that it's not being forced on everybody yet.
Yes, yet is the key.
That will be changing soon. Microsoft is adding ChatGPT to Notepad. That's
yes, they are.
Yeah, they've sort of looked at some of the advanced menus that are coming in the latest builds, and they can see that ChatGPT / Copilot will be available to sort of fill in the prompts, and they can see that there's going to be at least one UI element that allows you to issue the thumbs up to the prompt that it might give you, so that you can give that all-important AI a pat on the head that says, "You're great. Please give me more just like it."
Co-writer.
I just don't know. I just don't know.
I can just use a hotkey and rewrite it with co-writer. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So just a couple of sentences and just fill in. Yeah, an XML file where everything has to be quite exact. Or, there's so many programming tools out there right now that have AI as a co-pilot. I'm using lowercase c when I say that.
Next news story. This comes from the Register. The Hobbes OS 2 archive logs off permanently in April. OS 2 fans, beware.
Download
I was not aware this even existed.
Hold your peace.
Is it going to be archived on the Internet Archive? Can I go back to this archive later on archive.org?
You're asking for archival inception. I'm not sure that's even a thing.
Also, are there really that many OS 2 fans? I'm just not aware. I'm blissfully ignorant.
I'm shocked you're not.
This blew me away.
I was more OS 2 Warp, but
Oh, okay. So you like to run your OS 2 over Windows? I have a copy of OS 2 Warp somewhere in the box.
This is not a shock.
The death of things like this leaves us a little bit poorer in the tech world, in that we'll never be able to access some of these things again. It's gone forever. It will be gone forever. There are obviously media that can never be read again, or very, very
right. You can buy the possibly working media on eBay and then try to archive it yourself using a cryoflux or something, as we talked about last week. The grease weasel instead.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the Register contacted the Hobbes OS 2 archive for an explanation of the decision, and we will update should a response be forthcoming.
Like, there's so many people out there apparently that are so invested in this. They really need to know.
They? Okay, update.
Apparently.
Yesterday there was an update to the story. A representative from the New Mexico State University told the Register, "We have made the difficult decision to no longer host these files on hobbes.nmsu.edu. Although I'm unable to go into specifics."
Translation.
There's pressure. There's pressure from some outside entity on this.
Oh no, the server is dying, and they can't actually replace it.
It's like, hey,
you need to replace it. It's host our OS 2 files. No.
Yep.
It's a slot. It's dead. It's a slot 1 Pentium 3 667, and it started, shutting down randomly, and it's just flaky. No,
it's a SunSpark 2.
Oh, okay.
SCSI hard drives.
Something better than a Pentium 3. Okay.
SCSI hard drives, 50-pin terminators. We don't even know what this means anymore. We have to shut this down. It's Solaris 1.
They literally don't sell these parts anymore. We're just
You can't buy this stuff as a... You
have to go to a dump in New Mexico and dig up the correct SCSI cables. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Here's something.
Packs.
Here's a blast from the past that actually is still useful. MemTest 86, version 7 of MemTest 86 Plus.
Yep. Brand new.
Look at this. It's
days old even.
Yeah. Absolutely still of use. It even has ECC testing for Ryzen systems, 14th generation Intel processor support, AMD Zen 1 through Zen 4 with that ECC testing.
It's back. It's as simple to run as ever, and we'll have you popping out DIMMs all night until you figure out which one's the bad one.
Swapping them around.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I remember making the Linux
instead of 1T.
The Linux boot ones to do this on Windows machines as well, to do tests on and recovery because it went right past any protection you had. So if you booted it, with a Linux OneDrive or CD-ROM, you could get right past any of the Windows asking for a password. We don't need any of that.
Let's pause for a word from this week's podcast sponsor.
Ready to get healthy this year? Remember that New Year's promise? Well, it's been a couple of weeks, I know, right? But you can still help make that one a reality. We have been very happy customers of HelloFresh in the past, and now we can expand our culinary habits with an even wider and healthier selection from their newly acquired meal provider, GreenChef. GreenChef makes eating well much easier. Whether your preferred diet is keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, or you're just someone who enjoys tasty food that's good for your body and even the planet, GreenChef takes the work out of eating clean. Seriously, get nutritionist-approved recipes featuring organic whole fruits and veggies, organic cage-free eggs, and sustainably sourced seafood. May the shrimp always be bountiful. GreenChef will bring you these wholesome, farm-fresh ingredients and premium proteins, along with seasonally inspired recipes to bring out peak flavors and freshness for every season. Each week, you can choose from over 80 options, or easily customize your meals to suit your lifestyle and meal preferences with options like keto, vegan, fast and fit, Mediterranean, protein-packed, or gluten-free. We're really looking forward to eating well and cooking up some fabulously healthy meals. So go to greenchef.com/60PCPer and use code 60PCPer to get 60% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That URL again is greenchef.com/60PCPer and use code 60PCPer where you will get 60% off your first order and 20% off your next 2 months. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well.
We're back, and it's time for Insecurity Corner. And our first story comes from the Register. Patch time. Critical GitLab vulnerability exposes 2FA-less users to account takeovers. A perfect 10. This is a perfect 10?
It's a 10.
And it's been out there since May of 2023.
Yeah.
So self-managed Git instances, especially crafted HTTP request for a password reset against an unverified email, and you wish you're right past 2FA. So you've got to patch your GitLab instances out there. If anybody's running any of this, it's like Sebastian was saying, it's a perfect 10. Anything to add to this one, Jeremy? It's just very, very, very sad because this is very, very explicit and potentially very, very bad because it allows the attacker to completely take over your account.
I mean, there is a little bit of irony involved in it because GitLab refuses to support SMS-based 2FA because it's one of the most commonly hijacked ways of doing it, and yet that didn't work out so well now, did it?
It never does.
So, yeah.
There's at the time that this article was written, there's no evidence that it's being actively exploited, but the likelihood with the publication of this is that it's very, very soon now. So if, get patches as soon as you can, or stop running GitLab. I don't know which. Do one of those two.
Stop running older versions of Confluence. Atlassian warns of a critical RCE flaw, apparently not present in newer versions.
Newest, more or less, like January.
Yeah, as in like this month. So when they say newer, yeah, that kind of is like a very tongue-in-cheek moment because they are only supporting like 8.5, a version of 8.5 forward. So that's like the last three major revs, 8.5, 8.6, and 8.7. They aren't putting out patches for the older one. And this is a total exploit with a carefully crafted request to the Confluence server that allows them to completely own your instance. So if you're not running something newer than an 8.4, so that all the way goes back to like an 8.0, which I guess some versions of this are still out there, you're hosed. You have to shut this thing down or upgrade it. And even if you are on a version that you just patched, as in like 2-3 weeks ago, you're still hosed. You've got to patch it again, or else you're going to get owned
and this
very
is,
soon.
Again, a 10.0. Their scale is going to have to start going up to 11 soon, considering what we've seen so far.
Goes to 11.
That makes sense. It'll be the year for it. More from the Register. This is in the cybercrime Category: exploit for under siege SharePoint vulnerability reportedly in the hands of a ransomware crew. Functional exploit for a nearly year-old critical Microsoft SharePoint vulnerability that was this week added to the US's must-patch list.
I don't know why. It's a mere 9.8. But yeah, it's an elevation of privileges one, which we've seen proof of concept of it. We don't know for sure that it's really been used in the wild yet. But it's sort of a weird confluence of two different elevation of privilege flaws that when you run them together can essentially put you in charge of someone's SharePoint. And again, it doesn't really take much in the way of authentication, but you need to do a man in the middle sort of a thing to be able to get
after privilege escalation. You get RCE after privilege escalation, so you get remote code after.
Well, you're literally an administrator on your SharePoint then.
And the last thing is, even if you're on Windows Patch, automated patching, you're accepting all the patches. Here's the trick to this one: there is a manual patch to SharePoint that you must go out, gather, or apply through an intervention as the administrator. You won't get it automatically. So that's the critical point of this one, is that it is fixable. These exploits were somewhat patched some time ago, but again, you have to take a manual action. So go check for SharePoint updates manually rather than just relying on Windows
smart
Auto
to mention.
Yep.
And the good news is that the guy who discovered this actually got $100,000 out of Pwn to Own. Because sometimes these guys are not paying out their because Microsoft isn't paying out their bug hunters anymore. So at least he got something for it.
They can just use AI for that, probably.
They mean a large language model.
Yeah. Speaking of Microsoft Start story here. Ivanti VPN zero-day flaws are now being attacked en masse.
This is one of those, how do I say this? Schadenfreude ones. It's like, this is a security VPN endpoint that essentially allows that box. It's a dedicated appliance like box. And allows that to be remotely owned. Go ahead, Jeremy. Talk about this one.
Well, I mean, so far they've only detected just short of 20,000 appliances that are vulnerable to this. Well, sorry, 20,000 appliances that might be invulnerable to this. It's unsure. So that translation means we don't know how to detect whether or not you were actually vulnerable to this thing or not. But there is an exploit. Much chance to read at this.
There is an exploit that's actually being actively applied out there right now, with malware being installed, and there is no patch for this. So if you're running an Ivanti endpoint VPN, go shut it off. There is no defense against this right now. You are exploitable. That's the end. That's the end
annoying.
word.
Well, we don't know how to detect whether you're vulnerable or not, so you're vulnerable. Yeah, shut them down.
And this is a VPN endpoint for secure communications back to your corporate. And this is, as Jeremy was saying, used 17,000, 20,000 times out there. So this is used from small installations all the way up to mega Fortune 500 companies have this appliance and endpoint installed. They're all vulnerable right now, and it is actively today. It is actively being exploited. 0-day vulnerability. I'm surprised it's not a 10. Right now, they're only owning
you're pretty
your
quiet.
appliance.
You aren't using one of these, are you?
No,
I hope not.
Good.
So they're only owning your appliance, but as we know, once these artistes get a foothold in your infrastructure, they will bounce to something else. Oh, and they're deploying helpful malware so that they can begin to exploit your resources and attempt to attack other devices and internet outbound as well. So not just inside your organizations, but other organizations. Very helpful.
On a more positive note, Gaming Quick Hits begins with a look at Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 remastered. This is actually from the PlayStation blog, but I think the screenshots are pretty much the same. There is a Steam page live for this already. It's about a month away from its actual release. What's cool about this, at least from what I was reading, is you get a choice. You can toggle between the original or the remastered graphics.
So kind of like Halo Remastered.
You have classic or modern control options. Here's a look at the difference between the original. So a little bit, lower polygon count, of course, but that classic look, or this much higher.
Wait, that was supposed to be a cat?
I guess. Laura kneeling down, looking at some kind of blurry object, and then on this other version we see that is some kind of a statue, jade possibly, and the room a little bit higher quality textures, much higher polygon count model. So any of the frames they show with Lara Croft running around, she looks a lot more detailed, but proportionally similar if you were worried about that.
Well, there you go.
This is a look at the new high polygon version, which again, you can toggle it. So yeah.
Wow, she gained weight over the remaster.
Higher quality assets from this new version.
I noticed not only did you put a link in here to Steam, but I wanted to mention that this will also be available on Good Old Games.
Oh, is it? Okay. So
yes, it is.
The important thing is it's coming to the PC. This isn't just one of those.
It is.
Console things. It started on the PC, and that's where it belongs. Looks pretty good.
Exactly. As the YouTube chat says, you'll poke your eye out.
Next up, Rock Band 4 won't get any more DLC because we're living in Fortnite's world now. This is a story at PC Gamer. Harmonix has also been supporting Rock Band 4 DLC releases for 8 years. So that might be a factor too. Do you remember Rock Band? It never made it to the PC. Rock Band 4 didn't. Man, this has been like 8 years.
Yes, I'm continually reminded by it because my upstairs neighbor Chris apparently had one of the songs you could unlock after you'd beaten the game on it. So he brings it up a lot.
Was it? Was it by Tribe? But anyway,
no, Darkest of the Hillside Thickets.
So 3,000 songs they've added over the 8 years, but apparently after Epic bought them, they sort of started to roll the concept into Fortnite, if you can believe that, where they're going to come up with some sort of sideband rhythm thing that they can do inside of Fortnite, and Harmonix is sort of planting their flag inside.
The world is 2025. Every game is Fortnite now.
That's it exactly. Thank you, Jeremy. That's kind of where I was driving. In that Harmonix was like, no, we're all Fortnite now. And then they're doing some sort of rhythm game inside there. So sad to see it go. But
there are concerts inside of Fortnite. Fortnite is... Yeah, it's basically in youth culture. There's TikTok, there's Fortnite. This is where you learn your dances, the music clips.
So this is kind of like Second Life,
kids hang out,
but profitable,
and with less flying genitals.
Right, it's more family friendly, much more profitable.
Yeah. And unlike someone else's product, it does actually have legs, so you can dance.
They're not having to fake the legs either. They're baked right in. Okay, finally, Ubisoft, wherever you like to pronounce them, they want you to get comfortable with this concept that you don't own anything. So they have Ubisoft Plus, which accompanies the release of the newest Prince of Persia game, which is The Lost Crown. They've chosen this week to rebrand their subscription services and introduce a PC version of Classics tier at a lower price, getting players comfortable with not owning their games. Well, the the industry in general, the entertainment industry, has been working very hard to get people comfortable with this concept. You don't own anything. Physical media disappearing from stores like Best Buy. You have to rent content by paying for, Paramount Plus and Netflix and Disney Plus and all of this stuff to actually watch anything. So going forward, there are going to be fewer and fewer options to buy things physically, I imagine. And then if you buy it digitally and it's DRM'd, then what are you going to do when they shut servers down in a few years?
Exactly. But this one, like $18 a month to play Ubisoft games, and only Ubisoft games. Compare that to any of the other ones. It's more expensive and literally is ridiculously limited. And part of the thing is that, this will end up being a corporate boardroom decision of, hey, they're not playing Far Cry 78, the retirement years. Well, let's just cut off all the other Far Cries so then they have to play this one. It's not good. Even the head of Larian is like, no, this doesn't make any sense. So even the game devs are like, yeah, I can name one game publisher I'm never going to be using it again.
Let's move to picks of the week. Josh, please get us started.
You know what? I'm such a shill. Just, if you've been waiting for years for a video card, this is one of the first that is worth the price after the previous generation. So sure, go with the 4070 Super. Just get the one that's a little bit more expensive, $9, $10 more than MSRP. MSI makes a pretty good product, a little bit faster, a little bit better cooling, and, kind of worth it if you, really are itching to get all those DLSS 3 and 3.5 nifty things that NVIDIA offers through software in the 4000 series. So, I was not a huge fan of the 4070 and certainly not of the 4070 Ti and really not of the original 4080. But this at least gets down to where it's palatable. So if you need to upgrade, there are worse options.
Nice. Jeremy, your pick.
Well, I wanted to test out the Fozzie's active sub out, so I needed an active sub, and I went with the Edifier T5, which I gotta say is a pretty damn good subwoofer. The Fozzie doesn't like it. I'm still in communication with them because all it does is hum and literally not produce any music whatsoever, nor variants. It just hums. But the lovely thing about this is it has a completely passive pass-through in it. So
that's nice.
The audio goes into the bass and then it goes out into the Fozzie. So yeah, okay, I've got to deal with separate volume controls, but not too bad. And the other thing it is, on the back of it, there is a crossover switch. So you can dial in exactly what frequency you want before the bass kicks in. This is actually really nice. I'm enjoying it. It's Edifier. It's not cheap. I paid better part of $200 for it. But hey, if you're looking for a sub, I would recommend this thing. It's pretty good.
I like Edifier stuff. It's pretty well made from what I've seen.
Yeah,
that's very inexpensive for an active sub because that's Canadian, so that's like
also true.
$20
Oh
US.
God, yeah, you guys are probably paying $120 or so at most.
It's an 8-inch driver. I don't know what the let's see. In the US, they want $149 for it. It looks like this looks just like the sub that I used to have with my Logitech Z2300 speakers. It's like the same sub.
I guarantee you it weighs significantly more.
I don't know. It was pretty heavy, but okay. No, yeah. What are the specs on this thing? It has... Oh, it's only 70 watts RMS. But still, I mean, you're going to get some low end.
I'm not living in an arena. 70 watts does me just fine.
Okay. But what about those transients?
It's not bad.
All right, Brett.
You can manually...
Yes.
I picked these kind of general things a couple of weeks ago, which is how to mount those desktop or difficult to mount devices in a rack system. And I finally got them in a little while ago, and here's kind of one of them right here. This has got my Ares S33 modem in it, and this is part of what they would call their modular series, because I just picked another half of the rack to mount a Raspberry Pi. So essentially, I have them upside down and backwards right now, but they get connected together here in the middle. They've got some bolts that are included with the package, and you connect them, and then you could mount them inside the rack for a Raspberry Pi on one side and the Ares S33 modem, on the other. But they have.
If that's your modem, how are you on the internet?
That was the issue. There was some kind of
as he suddenly just pops out as he realizes he doesn't have an internet connection.
Just unplug this real quick.
Wait a minute!
As my pick of the week.
How is this even working? Anyway, they have 3D printed holders for a variety of desktop switches and other devices like Philips Hue devices, Hubitats. All kinds of different products that you can get to mount up in a rack. So you scroll down through here, you've got a small switch mounts, obviously Apple Mac type stuff, and even Apple TVs or Google devices are mountable in a rack unit. They're not that cheap.
No.
But if you absolutely want to put these in a rack, this is pretty much an easy way to get it done and without any hassle.
Would you recommend this over
this
just
is them, by the way.
making your own with like plywood and glue?
I would probably just order this for $50 and just be done with the problem.
Okay.
Because you're going to spend at least $50 of your own time or $60 of your own time doing it, figuring it out, modeling whatever device you're trying to use, setting up your 3D printer, doing the 2, 4, 5 different prints, trying to get it done. Probably it's just cheaper just to order it from these guys. And like I said, they're down under, so they're in Australia. So it's going to be a little bit in shipping.
Oh,
but it's one and done.
Hey, a little bit extra bonus news. The Pi shortage is over. The Pis are flowing again if you've been looking for one.
Yeah, they're upping production, I saw, by like 20,000.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a day or a week or however many they're actually making, but that's good news. Speaking of Raspberry Pi-like things, my pick this week is the A500 Mini, which we've mentioned on this show before. This is the Amiga emulator, but it's kind of just like a Raspberry Pi in a shell, sort of. But anyway, I got one of these for my birthday. My wife was kind enough to get one of these for me on Amazon. I have it right behind me.
That's a good gift for you. Really good.
And here it is. This is the, let me put myself on camera here.
My gosh.
Look at the accuracy of this. You've got the little.
Looks just like a real 500 scaled down.
Yep. You've got the.
Interesting.
The keyboard is non-functional. It's just for looks.
I was going to ask.
No, unfortunately.
It's tiny.
And the mouse it comes with is great because it looks just like a tank mouse.
It does. It looks just like an Amiga mouse.
It's a little smaller, but it's fine. It's a good mouse.
Super clicky.
That sounds right.
By the way, I got an Amiga 500 out just to show you the difference here. So here's an Amiga 500 with some broken plastic. Try to look past that. Right. But the difference is really just the size.
Obviously, one got washed in the hot water and it shrunk.
Right. So it's a very faithful reproduction. It's the novelty of just having this shell would be like just as a Raspberry Pi case would be high. But it is a fully functional Amiga emulator, and the reason I was telling her all about it and how I wanted one and she ended up, getting one for me is because initially this was WHD load only.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to have WHD load packaged games and, it's not hard to do. I have one of those thumb drives. But starting with firmware update, I think it was 1.1, they started adding, let's see, it's ADF support. So you can just directly load Amiga DOS format floppy images. And I updated this immediately out of the box to this current version 1.2.1.
Tell me Lemmings worked right away. Just
yes, I have Lemmings up and running immediately. That was the first game I tested. So
not Worms?
No, Worms comes preloaded on it. There's 25 games loaded on it on its internal flash, including Worms. But Lemmings was one of the games you had to put on there yourself, so I did that.
Yeah, fair.
And it's kind of cool because you can go into the settings and you can pick between NTSC and PAL. So if the game is running at the wrong speed, you can fix that. There's some screen options like turn smoothing on or off, change the size.
People don't realize that the clock crystal of the CPU was locked to the output frequency of the monitor, so you might have had to explain that, why they run at different speeds.
And Psygnosis, I think, was one of those companies that was very much clock dependent as far as their games were concerned.
Yeah.
So that's my pick.
On a too fast
and how much?
With a fast
how much
clock?
is that?
I don't know. I didn't buy it. She bought it. Let me go to Amazon and look at how much they're selling for right now. It's a A500 Mini.
115.
They are? Okay.
I don't know. I'm making a guess.
You're very close. They're around 102 to 109.
Oh, that's nice.
Dollars depending on the seller. So it's kind. I don't know. If you can buy yourself a Raspberry Pi, and there's excellent Amiga emulation software out there, if you can provide the ROM files.
Yeah, but it's all packaged. That's time saved. I mean, think about how long, if I was like, hey, I want to dig into Amiga. I need to read up on all this stuff. What's this? What's this? What's this? And, 17 hours later, I finally can get a boot drive going. So yeah, this is well worth the extra money.
Yes, but if all you want to do is play games, this is great. If you need Workbench and, the ability to load disk images and stuff, I don't know if this is the answer, but absolutely for gaming. It comes with a controller as well. I wish it came with a joystick, so we'll have to figure out what USB joystick works with it.
Oh, yeah.
Anyhow, that's...
it doesn't, no way to plug in the old 9-pin joystick to it, of course.
No, yeah, it's got a... It looks just
it's not big enough for a 9-pin connector on it.
It's got 3 USB ports, HDMI, and then USB-C for power. And I could tell that it was going to be a little bit light on the processing side because it's just 5-volt 1-amp requirement. So not like a newer Raspberry Pi that needs, 3 amps or something.
Yeah, strangely powerful USB charger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you should go completely heretical on this and get one of those old, the new ones, the Atari joystick that's USB controlled, and attach it to that. That would just be,
if it works,
horrific.
All right, that's picks of the week, and it's time to wrap up this episode of the PC Perspective Podcast. We want to thank you so much for watching, listening to us ramble on and on. Josh, I don't know if you saw the outro last week, but
no,
because you were just like, I don't know why you've been listening to this crap for the last 2 hours, and when you got done with your rant, I just cut it off. That was the end of the show.
Oh, that was it.
I showed it to my wife. She thought it was hilarious, but she thinks Josh is hilarious anyway.
Well, she hasn't met me, so the stench of my unbathed body will soon turn anyone away.
That's a different matter entirely. She just likes your
there's an outro.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about unwashed bodies or bodies in general.
No,
really.
No, we don't.
Mm-mm. But once Smell-O-Vision shows up on YouTube,
yeah,
our channel is doomed.